In a viral clip, CNN's Brian Stelter was confronted by a student that says the mainstream media ain't trustworthy, and the mainstream media is up in arms. But did this student have a point? Hello there, you 5.4 million awakening wonders. We are closing in on 5.5 million. Can you imagine that? Should we get to 6 million? How many awakening wonders can this world stand before we truly awaken? We will keep bringing you these stories as long as you stay with us. If you don't subscribe yet, subscribe now. If you want to come and see me live, you can. There's a link in the description. And please sign up to my mailing list because it's so important that I have direct contact with you. It's one click away. I'll put it up at the end. If you like the video, you can join. You'll be happy to see that. Oh, my precious plant. You're back to life. You're back to glory. Ah, there you are, old log store. How I love thee. How I love thee. Yuval Noah Harari just came on the podcast once, okay? Don't panic. He was a podcast guest. You can see it on Under the Skin if you want to. Now, let's tell you and show you how we are different from the mainstream media, because we are on the side of the kid that confronted Brian Stelter rather than on the side of the mainstream media. We want you to have power in your own lives, to run your own community, to be free to express yourselves and form alliances and allegiances however you want to. Let's first have a look at this clip because it's always nice to see, isn't it? People being confronted. You dream of moments like that, don't you? Being able to confront someone and tell them exactly what you think. Well, how dare you? I'll give you a piece of my mind, Sonny Jim.
Hi, thank you for coming. My name is Christopher Phillips. I'm a first year at the college. My question's for Mr. Stelter.
Firstly, how dare they be at a conference called Disinformation and the Erosion of Democracy when they must know in their heart of hearts that part of the problem with disinformation and the erosion of democracy are the relationships that exist between mainstream media, legacy media, corporate media, tell me in the comments what your preferred phrase is, and big business and corporations. Take just one example, the pharmaceutical industry. How can the mainstream media report honestly and openly about the pharmaceutical industry when the pharmaceutical industry contributes 75% of their advertising revenue? How can they? Tell me in the comments below if you think it's possible.
You've all spoken extensively about Fox News being a purveyor of disinformation. But CNN is right up there with them. They pushed the Russian collusion hoax.
At that point, they'll be thinking, oh shit, I don't like this guy's question. This isn't a compliment. How's this kid gonna turn that into a compliment?
They pushed the Jussie Smollett hoax, and they also smeared Nick Sandmann as a white supremacist. And yes, they dismissed the Hunter Biden laptop affair as pure Russian disinformation.
He's come with data, hasn't he, the kid? He's done his research, he's reading of it. Oh my God, this kid's got notes. That's not fair. You're supposed to accept what I say. Where did you get those notes? From goddamn Joe Rogan?
With mainstream corporate journalists becoming little more than apologists and cheerleaders for the regime, is it time to finally declare that the canon of journalistic ethics is dead or no longer operative? All the mistakes of the mainstream media and CNN in particular seem to magically all go in one direction. Are we expected to believe that this is all just some sort of random coincidence, or is there something else behind it?
Well, great question from a bright and awakening young man. What you want as an answer to that question is, do you know what? We struggle. It's very difficult to run a corporation that has its interests split across financial imperatives, a long tradition of relationships with certain organizations, regulation from the government, a set of relationships and biases that have formed over time. We could do better. We will do better. The examples you gave are clear-cut instances where we should have been more transparent and where now we've got the opportunity to apologize. I wonder what they will say, though.
It's too bad. It's time for lunch.
I know how to diffuse this. I do what Joe Rogan would do. I'll use a little one of my skits. Too bad it's time for lunch, honey bun.
I think my honest answer to you, and I'll come over and talk in more detail after this, is that I think you're describing a different channel than the one that I watch. But I understand that that is a popular right-wing narrative about CNN.
Yeah, see? And what you've done is you've fallen for propaganda. Literally, you can see it happening in real time. If someone queries their agenda, they're immediately labelled right-wing. I know a bit about this because it's happened to me. I'm not interested in those words, wing, left wing, right wing anymore. They're being used to turn people against one another. But it's just interesting to watch live how Brian Stelter, instead of addressing those points, dismisses the whole concept.
I think it's important when we talk about shared reality and democracy, all these networks, all these news outlets have to defend democracy. And when they screw up, admit it. But when Benjamin Hall, the Fox correspondent, was wounded in Ukraine, The news crews at CNN and the New York Times stopped what they were doing, and they tried to help. They tried to help him get out of the country. They tried to find the dead crew members. That's what news outlets do.
That's a slightly different thing, isn't it? Because that's a human emergency. I mean, that makes you acknowledge that there's this strata of data that's being propagated, and I use that word deliberately in order to ensure that broad systemic and social agenda can be met. And then there's actual reality where a human being's lying on the ground injured. Of course you would prioritise that. If you didn't, that would make you a psychopath.
Well, we're not psychopaths most of the time.
That's how they actually do work together. To your question about sharing those kinds of connections and trust, we don't talk about it enough, though.
No, because it's not relevant.
Well, you say that I'm a son of a gun, but only recently I helped a little old lady across the street.
No, that doesn't matter if there are examples in your own life of you being nice. The kid isn't saying, are people nice on a day-to-day basis? He's like, are there systemic biases in place on both sides that need to be addressed? And why are you not talking specifically about the Hunter Biden laptop and about accusations and smears? The kid's question was pretty specific.
We don't share that reality about how that happens.
I'm grateful to that kid, and I think we all should be, because he's raising a point in a context that's relevant about something that a lot of us feel all the way across the political spectrum. According to a survey by YouGov, the most politically polarizing media outlet is CNN. In 2021, Americans' trust in the media to report the news fully, accurately and fairly dropped to 36%, the second lowest in Gallup's trend. That means, generally speaking, we don't trust the media. You could do this as an experiment in your own life. You can just ask people you meet, like, people from different age and racial and identity demographics, do you trust the media? And most people will say no. Why is it that trust has dropped? Well, to some degree, it's because of systemic problems that the media faces, i.e. the financial model upon which it is dependent, notably advertising revenue. According to data from Kagan cited by Pew, total advertising revenue for the three major news channels in 2020 was $1.7 billion for CNN, $2.9 billion for Fox News, and $1.1 billion for MSNBC. So their model is dependent upon billions of dollars of advertising revenue. I know from running this little channel with the dedicated team that we have that if you start taking on sponsorship commitments or even having ad revenue turned on, you have certain requirements and modifications that require a dance worthy of Nijinsky to stay true to your principles. When you're operating in total tandem with the corporate and economic requirements of a system that's built upon the necessary ignorance of ordinary people and the control of information, you've got no chance at all. Furthermore, there are modern phenomena that need to be looked at. For example, data capture. We're told that the news is transparent and without bias. We've already looked at advertising and the impediments that places on their model. Nowadays, we know media outlets require data capture and spying, not as some weird tangential thing, but as part of its economic model. News outlets entrusted with promoting transparency and privacy are also lobbying behind closed doors against proposals to regulate the mass collection of Americans' data. The lobbying trade group, AB, represents both data brokers and online media outlets that depend on digital advertising, such as CNN, the New York Times, MSNBC, Time, US News and World Report, The Washington Post, Vox, The Orlando Sentinel, Fox News, and dozens of other media companies. Did you feel like an urge to cheer for your favourite one? Hooray, Fox News, I like them. Well, they're all working together to ensure that the law doesn't change, to prevent them making money from capturing your data. So even though they might have different fonts and different people and wear slightly different outfits and prefer a different coloured tie on the president, when it comes to the crunch and believe the crunch is the sound of dollar bills in pockets, they all believe the exact same thing.
How dare you say I'm biased? I helped a guy get back to his feet.
Who pays you guys?
Well, we all get paid by the same people, but that's not the point.
Major media corporations increasingly rely on a vast ecosystem of privacy violations, even as the public relies on them to report on it. So you might watch corporate media, legacy media, and say, tell us more about what's going on with data capture. Edward Snowden's trying his best to keep us informed. Tell us more about it.
Oh, well, we're going to draw a little veil over that, but I helped a cat get out of a tree. And that cat belonged to a person that liked Donald Trump. So there you go, baby.
In 2020, a study found that news websites contained the most trackers globally, more than business, banking, entertainment, or adult websites. That means that the legacy media, the corporate media, is more likely to spy on you, harvest, sell, and use your data and give it to advertisers to make money than banking, big business, and porn. And any of you that have ever been on a porn website, you'll notice that there's some cookies popping up as those guys follow you around. Remember me? I know where you've just been.
Get off of me! Do you not know I just helped a guy back on his feet? Damn you, Rogan!
Good Morning America is brought to you by Pfizer.
CBS Health Watch sponsored by Pfizer.
Anderson Cooper 360. Brought to you by Pfizer.
ABC News Nightline. Brought to you by Pfizer.
Making a difference. Brought to you by Pfizer.
CNN Tonight. Brought to you by Pfizer. Early Start. Brought to you by Pfizer. Friday night on Aaron Burnett Out Front. Brought to you by Pfizer.
So what kind of objectivity do you imagine you're going to get when reporting on Pfizer, when Pfizer are so significant in the funding of the models that are promising you objectivity, meanwhile capturing your data and engaging you in an endless squabble about the tiny differences between the manner in which they report? So that young student, Christopher Phillips, has done us all a great turn there by confronting a pious and, in my view, quite pompous mouthpiece of the mainstream media with an important piece of reality. No one is in a position to make condemnatory overtures about rival channels because really they're competing for the same viewers so that they can get the same advertising revenue from the same companies and give you essentially the same message. So whoever your particular favourite is, know that when it comes to payday, it's the same people that are paying their checks. But that's just what I think. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. How would you like to see those kind of companies regulated? What kind of media do you want? What kind of relationship do you want with the media? How do you want your voice, your views, your opinions to be expressed? Hit me up with all that in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, have a look at this one or this one. They're both pretty fantastic videos, as a matter of fact. If you don't subscribe to the channel already, please subscribe to it. And if you want to be a member of my little mailing list community, click on that link. Then I can communicate directly, and vice versa, by the way, all of the time if required. Please come and see me live if you fancy it. There's a link in the description there. Most importantly of all, though, please stay free.